Hello there, welcome to this history revision video on Helmsley Castle, history around us. This is Helmsley Castle in the 16th century. We're going to talk about the Manners family and the creation of the Tudor mansion. So this shows you an artistic interpretation by Alan Sorrell in the 16th century. So you can see here the changes that were brought in, the Tudor mansion. One of the distinctive features you can see here is the very distinctive long gallery that linked the west tower to the chapel during this time, and that was a key part of the changes that were made as part of the Tudor mansion, and that sort of chamber block area, the sort of west range next to the west tower, were converted into a Tudor mansion during this time period. So you get a really good sense of the changes that were made to the castle during this time. You can see there the castle's still intact. You've got South Barbican at the forefront of the picture, and the very distinctive D-shaped east tower with its distinctive ear turrets is there as well. Here's another artistic interpretation, which again shows you that sort of long gallery. We can see there the sort of wall that linked the west tower and the east tower. You've got some gardens in there as well. Okay, so all in all, you know, a really nice Tudor mansion befitting of the Manners family during this time. Okay, so let's have a little look at the Manners family. Well, Thomas Manners was a member of Henry VIII's court. He became the Earl of Rutland in 1538. He actually helped remove Abbot Edward of Rievaulx during the dissolution of the monasteries in 1538. He bought the site of Rievaulx and began to dismantle the buildings to use to build up Helmsley. He made few alterations, however, to the castle. Now, Edward Manners, born 1549, died 1587, was the grandson of Thomas, and he inherited the castle in 1563. Now, it's really important to know that he mainly lived at Belvoir Castle in Leicestershire, but Edward Manners converted the castle into a grand country house, possibly would come here to stay for breaks, but it wasn't his main residence, but this was probably motivated by his marriage to Isabel Holcroft. The pair's main residence was Belvoir Castle in Rutland, however, which was, to be fair, much grander. So let's have a look at the creation of the Tudor mansion. Now we can see there an image of the arms of Edward Manners, the 3rd Earl of Rutland, and his wife Isabel Holcroft in the first floor of the chamber block. So this mansion was very much about honouring them too. And again, this change reflects very much the increasing domestic role of the castle. It's not particularly a change in use, because I think the castle's already been used very domestically during this time, but obviously it's a significant physical change to the site. And if you're thinking about what aspects of the site survive today, it's the Tudor mansion which is the best preserved bit. So the old hall is converted into a Tudor mansion. There's a large fireplace downstairs with 3 large windows, and it was knocked through to the west tower. 13th century chapel converted into a kitchen. The South Barbican converted into a more comfortable residence, and the gatehouse was refurbished, most likely with some stone from Rievaulx Abbey, which can be seen in terms of site evidence. The 12th century chamber block, the west tower and latrine were adapted to create chambers and state apartments, and the plasterwork, the ornamental plasterwork, included the coat of arms of Edward Manners and his wife Isabel Holcroft, which you can see there. The first floor, created between the chamber block and the chapel, was an Elizabethan style long gallery, which had been a long room with decorative ceilings, panelling, family portraits, and would have been used for dancing, entertaining and exercise during this time. And we can still see the footings for the long gallery that's visible today. There also would have been a loggia with little ornate pillars as well, which was again a key distinctive feature of Elizabethan architecture, and we can see an image of what a loggia was as well just down there in the bottom right hand side. Now, some medieval buildings such as the hall were demolished and the materials were reused. The west window of Rievaulx Abbey was transferred to Helmsley at a cost of £3, 13 shillings and 4 pence, and the changes were all completed by 1582. And again, thinking about diversity, creating work for people in and around the town of Helmsley who would have completed this work. Okay, now there was a private dining room in the 16th century mansion. The fireplace in the northeast wall was dated 1582. It was decorated with polygonal panels with knots and roses, so again very decorative inside. The decorative plasterwork, impressive fireplace and heraldic frieze of Edward and Isabel emphasises the high status of the different rooms. We'll have a look at those in a moment. You can see there the Tudor mansion from the outside of the walls there. You can see how that was kind of built up. And you can also see it from the other side there, and you can see that loggia that I was talking about before, which is like a covering with sort of pillars on it as well, and some of the gardens that had in the Tudor mansion as well. And also you can see that wall that linked the west tower down to the east tower as well. So in terms of the site evidence that we can see there now to tell the story of the Elizabethan Tudor mansion, A is the West Tower, B is the original doorway around 1200, C is the doorway from the first floor onto what would have been the loggia balcony, D is the base of the medieval chimney, E is the footing of the steps that led onto the loggia balcony, F is the chamber block itself, G is the footings of the Elizabethan Long Gallery, which have extended all the way to the East Tower, and H is the latrine tower, which is also extended during this time as well. So some more examples of source evidence and site evidence. We have a letter from Edward Manners' agent, who's called William Seagrave, who probably oversaw the works. Remember, Edward Manners would have been spending most of his time at Belvoir Castle in the sort of Rutland, Leicestershire area. And he said, "Your buildings at the castle here do not proceed so speedily as the masons supposed. The masons' work will not be ended before August." So showed that even in 16th century you could have problems with your builders. The site evidence for the latrine tower and changes to the West Tower we can see as well provides evidence of the increased domestic role of the castle due to the remodelling by Edward Manners. So the latrine tower all about creating more facilities, much more of a domestic role of the castle during this time as well, but also a slight decline as well but by the 15th and 16th century in the castle, in terms that it was no longer the main residence of the family. And certainly before the English Civil War, there's evidence that no one was really permanently living in Helmsley Castle. So the daughter of Roger Manners, 5th Earl of Rutland, Bridget, became a lady-in-waiting to Elizabeth I, which is a very respected position, and that shows again how significant sort of nationally the Manners family were and how well connected they were. There's a little letter there that reinforces that. Now, Roger Manners later joined the Duke of Essex failed uprising against Queen Elizabeth, and he was executed. Essex was executed for his role in the plot, and you learned about that in your Elizabethans course, while Manners escaped execution with a fine of £30,000, but he was imprisoned in the Tower of London before his trial. Now, Helmsley Castle remained in the possession of the Earls of Rutland throughout the late 16th and early 17th century, but with their main residence being Belvoir Castle. That gives you an artistic reconstruction of the interior of the Tudor mansion, so it's really important to remember, and you can still see some good site evidence of the interior of the Tudor mansion. It's actually made in the 19th century, but again it just reinforces the sort of ornate plasterwork, the wood panelling that was all very consistent with Elizabethan styles of house. So again, that artistic reconstruction just shows you what we've been looking at and what we've been talking about there in terms of the changes made to the castle during this time. So there you have it. That's a nice little overview of what's there in green on those timelines. The Manners family, particularly the influence of Edward Manners. Manners built the mansion, much more a domestic focus, and thinking about the stage in development of Helmsley Castle. Thanks very much for listening. Bye-bye.